Yellowstone supervolcano shock, geologist warns that a super eruption, fiery fallout, means that 5 billion people worldwide could be devastated. This is by Sebastian Ketley on Express UK, having to do with Lowenstein's analysis of what he gave a few years ago at Menlo Park, California. Yellowstone supervolcano threatens more than 5 billion people and could plunge the world into a volcanic winter, what's called a nuclear winter, the next time it erupts in this way. This is what the geologist warns of. Of course, we know of this from previous eruptions. Yellowstone Volcano, northwest US in Wyoming, as we know, is the biggest potential cataclysm waiting to happen. As Michio Kaku, professor from City College, states, it's a Godzilla sleeping under Yellowstone. It's not Yogi Bear. Now, located among the beautiful, beautiful areas, the mountains of Wyoming, the Yellowstone National Park is simply beautiful, but it is a supervolcano, and it's active and under constant surveillance. It's deforming, it's quaking, its geysers are erupting. The video before this one, you'll notice that we have the Ledger geyser also erupting recently, as did the Steamboat geyser erupt recently. They're both in the Norris Geyser Basin, and that has been rising, deforming and rising. So there's been quite a lot of activity in the rising and growing of that area. In the meantime, the Yellowstone Lake is subsiding, so we have all types of deformations there. Now we know that there's a hotspot under the Yellowstone Lake. The caldera roof is right there. And we know that the supervolcano is believed to have last erupted about 640,000 years ago. Before that, 1.3 million years ago, and before that, 2.1 million years ago. And that hotspot path led all the way from what is now western California around Long Valley Caldera, all the way up through Nevada, through Idaho, through Crater Moon, and through all the way into the area that it's in now. In other words, it's heading northeast. So the super eruption, the last one, was about 640,000 years ago. There was another smaller eruption 70,000 years ago. And from what Lowenstein described to us, there have been another 80 eruptions since then. He says that we're overdue, about 10,000 years overdue. So should another caldera-forming eruption explode in this near future, the geologists from the University of Silesia in Katowice, Poland, are warning, and they fear that a lethal consequence would be felt not only in the United States, but it would be worldwide. Dr. Jerzy Zaba is from the University Department of Fundamental Geology, told WP Poland that the Yellowstone supervolcano has the power to trigger a devastating climate change. Well, we've seen that in the past, haven't we, when they had a few years where they couldn't grow anything in the Middle Ages. Now, he said, I predict an eruption similar to the one from 640,000 years ago would destroy most of the United States territories. The erupted materials would cover everything within 310 miles radius with a 3-foot thick layer of ash. No, that's not 3. See, I'm getting it mixed up again. I'm reading from the article. 3 meters is about 9 to 10 feet. Then, and due to the emission of the dust and the gases, or sulfur monoxides, into the atmosphere, we would witness a cooling of the climate. It's not bad enough that we have all this worldwide ash. We also have the lowered temperatures. And he goes on to explain the sulfur monoxide would create a thin veil of sulfuric acid around the planet, reflecting sunlight, and it would stay up for many years. I estimate due to the effects of climate change, around 5 billion people would die from hunger. Famine, in other words. If Yellowstone erupts, the experts said the only reasonable thing to do is to evacuate, flee North America completely. And unfortunately, Dr. Zaba warned nothing can be done to prevent a future eruption of the supervolcano. Well, we know that NASA lately, a couple of years ago, came up with the idea that perhaps they could mitigate it by, slow it down by drilling holes into it and cooling it. But the thing is, if you start drilling holes in this huge thing, because they're always finding out something new concerning the supervolcano, things they didn't know about before. For example, where the plumes are, where the hot spots are directly located. What happens if you drill into the roof of a chamber and start the eruption that you feared would take place? That's why the geologist in charge is Michael Pollan. It's against the NASA project of cooling it down. He doesn't want anyone getting anywhere near the supervolcano and touching it in any way, shape, or form. Because the supervolcano is not even like a regular volcano. Now, unfortunately, Dr. Zaba warned nothing can be done to prevent the future eruption of Yellowstone supervolcano. He said the only thing that can be done, sorry, let me have a drink of coffee. That's good. He said the only thing that could be done is evacuation of people. He says, however, if we're talking about the whole nation, a pretty big one, by the way, then it would have to happen onto another continent. Now, he's talking about the United States. Well, what about Canada? I'm sorry, but I'm also Canadian. I used to live in Montreal. Now, look, Canada doesn't have that many people. When I was there, we were only 10 million. Now I think it's about 30 million. But, oh my goodness, can you imagine the logistics of trying to evacuate all these people? The thing is, I know that the United States does have an agreement with southern countries to accept Yellowstone evacuees, but how many would those be? And it definitely would not be the whole of the country. I don't even know if that's at all possible. Obviously, they would have to come up with a list, quote unquote. You know what I mean by list, don't you? Yes, of course you know what I mean by list. I'm not going to get into that, but they are expecting, and that's why they got into an agreement with southern countries. I think South Africa declined to get into agreement because they don't want an influx of people that may disrupt the makeup of their populace and cause a majority of people that are right now a minority there. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get into the details of that, but it's a logistics problem. And what can I say? Maybe Australia is the best place for them to go, because Australia, I think, is one of the least populated places on Earth. Australia. And most of that continent is not even populated. Most of the people live on the southeastern part of the eastern coast of Australia. The rest of the continent is just empty. So that would be a good place. Anyway, the Polish geologist says that if we're talking about the whole nation, a pretty big one, by the way, then it would have to happen to another continent. He says these are forces on which people have no influence and have to observe with incredible humility, of course. So he says, with that in mind, the geologist said there is no reasonable way to predict when the supervolcano or any other supervolcano will erupt. Dr. Saba says that there have been a total of 42 supervolcano eruptions over the last 36 million years, with one going off on an average less than once every 1 million years. Less than 1 million years. So when was the last time one went off, a supervolcano? I have no idea. He said this is not a frequent process for us, but from the Earth's perspective, yes, and it can very much happen. So Yellowstone Volcano is monitored, as we know, by the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, which is a branch of the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, and the YVO scientists keep track of the ground uplift because they have monitors, seismographs recording the seismic activity within the Yellowstone caldera through numerous monitoring stations. But it's not just the Yellowstone caldera that we have to worry about, it's also the surrounding area of the Yellowstone caldera. For example, in Montana, we have tremendous earthquake swarms in Montana, and people are pensive. They're saying, what does that mean? Does a volcano coming, well, Montana also has a couple of volcanoes. They were dormant, but that does not mean that they don't, they will not erupt. Anyway, a dormant volcano doesn't mean it's not going to erupt. Now, I'm looking at Seismo Berkeley going into, okay, we've had, we continue to have the quake swarms. This around Helena, if you look around Helena, Montana, also around the Missouri Red Rock area, just at the corner of the Wyoming border with Montana. And the same thing with Idaho. We have Idaho also in quakes around, or just basically around in Utah, which is basically bordering the Wyoming border with Yellowstone supervolcano. Just because they say we're monitoring the caldera doesn't mean that we're not having quakes all around Yellowstone. We are. They're ongoing totally. As I said, it's about 2.5 times bigger in size than what they thought it was. So obviously it's taking in these areas of Montana and Idaho and Utah. So I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.